Or was it? It was like somebody. Let's see. Companies are on fire. Toxic bosses. Let's see. That was yours. Oh yeah, the microaggressions and stuff. Dealing with that. Coworkers. There was something else too. It wasn't just that one. I don't know. It will pop up. Let me see. I got too much stuff. I know I was gonna share like working with one of my contractors and stuff like that headache I had. I had one girl do work, but like it wasn't. I knew she didn't work that many hours, but there was no way for me to prove it because my stuff was so vague. So that
Mm-hmm.
was definitely a headache to deal with.
Oh yeah, it happens, but sometimes you have to pin them down and ask people directly. Like I've had to, unfortunately, let many a folk go. You know, when you're working in that virtual space, sometimes people think they can take advantage. So
Mm-hmm.
there's different management skills that have to be implemented to be effective, you know, managing in that virtual space. And some people just aren't equipped to work in the virtual space because they're so tempted to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to take extra time. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I needed that that little spiel. Like, how do you handle these situations? Because I got a few of them, few stories.
Well, yeah, I'll have them walk through, like, tell me how your day, you know, what you did, and, you know, and then kind of stop and question. At one point, I had someone, I think she'd forgotten she messaged me that her internet was down, so she wasn't able to work that day. And then the timesheet comes through, and she's got 4 hours logged. And so, so at that point, I let her go. But you know, I told her, I said, well, you know, according to you, your internet was down and you weren't
Mm,
able to work. Remember? And she kind of was like, oh, you know, like she was lost for
yeah.
words.
See, I should. Lord Jesus, let me. Okay, well, first off, let me maximize my screen real quick. I had this down, and oh, hey y'all, Ariana, Tanya. I'm sorry, Tanya,
Oh,
Tanya,
hi, how was
Tanya.
everyone?
I know I had the thing minimized. Oh my god, I'm embarrassed. Um, anywho, I hope I pronounced you lady's name right. Feel free to come on up. We kind of hold this as a conversation base. It's not like a we're lecturing and preaching to you type thing. We're just kind of sharing stories, what could have done better, and things like that. So if you have any remarks or you want to share your own story, get feedback on something, feel free to come up. But on that note, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I'll start off with me. I'll start with my little examples. Like luckily I have it better controlled now, but I will say one of the bigger ones I had an issue with, of course, is like I work with 1099 contractors, and my biggest thing with that was just finding the right people that I don't want to sound like, oh, they don't want to work, but like finding the ones that stick to what you hired them for. So, like, I had someone for like social media, for an example, and it turns out she didn't want to do social media. She wanted to do kind of like more coaching and stuff. So, like, she bailed during a pretty important project of mine. So, I had to have my operations manager come in and help me out, just kind of like get things in order. But when I at first I was worried because like she went ghost, so like I didn't hear from her for like a couple of days. I thought something happened, so like at that moment I was just like, oh no, like did something happen? I don't see anything. And then like I finally found like her social media and saw like she was still posting and like advertising something else. So that conversation I wanted to avoid it because at that time I was still kind of like, I don't want to. I want to be like the nice boss. Like I don't. I want to be laid back and chill. But like having that conversation, like, hey, like that wasn't cool what you did, and letting her go because like just I can't depend on that. And like no response, no nothing. Like she finally like kind of responded to that. Like okay, That's cool. I had to send an email because like she wasn't responding to anything. So I had to like come up with the email, let her know, hey, I'm letting you go. This is why, and blah blah blah. But I would love to know like your input as to how to navigate something like that, especially with like remote teams. Like, how do you like what would you put in place, or what would you say how to handle that tough conversation?
Well, I don't even know if it's a conversation. If they've abandoned the job,
Yeah.
like, and I've had that happen, right? And yeah, I have to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
I try to, because I think every conversation should be, um, if not in person, excuse me, in the virtual space, it should be, like over the phone or a Zoom or Google Meets or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Even WhatsApp, you can, do kind of like the FaceTiming there. And so, it's just key to be direct. At times, if you can't find the individual, I actually have a letter template that we send to them, just letting them know we're closing them out, because the way in which their contract, that's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
What's their employment contract or their contractor contract? What's the language there? And so
Mm-hmm.
mine states that, employment can end at any time. And so, you know, along the lines of that, like, there's some verbiage in the letter that just kind of reiterates that. And it speaks to, we're going to end your contract effective, today. And it has language around, like, if there's still owed monies, our payroll
Yeah.
person will be processing your last payment, and then we'll also follow up with a summary of all the payments that you've received. But sometimes there's just not anything that you can do. If the person has shown promise, um, you can engage with them, and then you can ask them, like, if something's going on, like if this is, such a change from their normal behavior, because there might be some life event that's going on, or an illness in the family, and they've just, you know they
Yeah.
let that kind of overtake them, and then you have to use your judgment whether or not you're actually going to let them come back. And I let someone come back, like they disappeared, and then she called me crying, saying, oh, her dog, was sick. They thought they were gonna have to put the dog down, like the dog had cancer or something. I'm a dog person,
Yeah.
so it tugged at my heartstrings. And she was like, I'm so sorry, I won't let it happen again. Because I'm like, you should have just messaged me. Um, and so I let her come back. But long story short, things were good for about a good 4 months or so, and then she disappeared again.
Mm.
And so, at that point, that's where we just sent the letter, letting her know, hey, we're ending your contract, and just giving her the details on how we'll process her last payment.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much I went in line with that for the contractor. So I just paid out whatever hours she did work or logged, and we just called it a day. But that
Yeah,
was definitely an experience.
yeah,
Yeah, so I usually try to keep the door open, like with communication, like reaching out. And honestly, after that situation, that's when I was like, okay, let me tweak up like my culture policies. So I was like, I felt like I was chill and stuff, but like I felt like I wasn't direct enough. So I was like, let me tweaking in a way where I'm more direct and asking questions and stuff, because I felt like I could have still, even though like she ghosted, I still feel like I could have handled that situation a little bit better had I actually been like kind of prepared for it. But yeah, so thank you for that. That was helpful.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Like I said, it can be, like I said, you have to employ some different like management skills. I think for the remote work, especially kind of more gig work, especially if there's like if you're doing the independent contractor route, many times, and now with the changes to the that the DOL release regarding the
Mm-hmm.
independent versus W-2 status, you do want your independent contractors to have other gigs or jobs, or things that they're doing too. But for some of the individuals, you have to make it clear and make sure they realize, like, this isn't just like an easy money type of thing because it's remote, um,
Right.
and it may be like project work. But like now, I explain, especially because I find that I typically end up attracting like the younger generation, and I explain to them, it's different than maybe if you were working for a corporation, because
Right.
our clients are other business owners, and so it's more personal. You know, like their livelihoods on the line. Like this is how they, and I tell them, you know, sometimes I bring the drama. I tell them, I said, this is how they live and eat. Like, because I need them to understand,
Yeah.
like, you know, so they're really counting on you, you know, to be committed to your job and to really do a good job and to deliver, you know, on the things that we've set as expectations. And so, you know, I think providing that differentiator for them in that vantage point is also key. You know, not to think that this is just something I'm going to just, you know, tittle away at something. Or, you know, if you're doing social media, like I'm going to like half do it. And sometimes the posts go up, um, you know, in the morning. Sometimes the posts go up in the afternoon.
Hmm.
You know, no, like there needs to be attention to detail. There needs to be that commitment, you know, so that it is consistent, right?
Right. No, that definitely makes sense. I do want to take a quick moment. Hey, everybody. Christina, Michael, Catherine, Kimberly, thank you guys for hopping in. This is Tales from the Water Cooler. We kind of use a conversational base with these LinkedIn audios where we kind of just discuss different problems, whether we've had it, clients, or just in passing. So feel free to come up, share your story. If you have advice to give, we would love to hear it. Yeah, so this is pretty much open stage. We're not hogging up anything. We don't want it to be like a we're teaching moment. Just
Mm-hmm.
conversations.
Yeah, and I have to highlight Mr. Michael Watkins. That is my friend from childhood, son, who is just a
Oh,
tech genius and business owner at his young age. He is in his early teens, and so
oh wow.
yeah, yeah, phenomenal young man. You guys check him out. I saw a post. He has an offer out there, I think, to review your SEO. So you guys check him out for sure.
That's awesome. Congratulations. I love it.
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, we letting these youngsters run circles around us, so
Right.
we have to step it up. Yep, for
Okay.
sure. So let's get into the article. Like, tell me about the article a little bit more that you came across, Adriana.
Lord, let me find it. Oh man. I was like, I lost my place with it. Where was it? Oh, it was about like the little quit talk. That's actually what I was going to bring up too, even like
Mm-hmm.
outside like the article. So like lately, and I've actually personally seen these too, but like lately on TikTok, yeah, I love TikTok. So I've been seeing people like posting their conversations with their leadership. So it might be the manager, for some cases like CEO or something. They've been posting this on TikTok just to kind of like show them getting fired or getting disciplined. And I wanted to know how people feel about that because that was new. Like that's something I would never have thought to like record
Mm-hmm.
and post. Let me say record and post. Like I'll document stuff, but like record and post it. So I was just wondering, like, how do you navigate something like that? Especially because I know some of these companies have really, really tight policies about posting things online, especially during company time or like their internal conversation and things. So I was just like, how do you go about that?
Yeah. I again, I think it's a sign of the times, and I think it's something that we haven't had to address before, right? As
Hmm.
companies, and so you know, or HR, you know, in my realm, HR professionals, but it is a reality. It's mostly the ones that I've seen have been, you know, kind of the younger demographic of individuals who have grown up on social media. So we have to remember that they've been socialized that they should share everything, right? And you know, so it's a different culture. So I think companies do have to look at, you know, whether or not they have stipulations and things of that nature. I think that also, you know, the individuals that are posting, again, they're usually a younger demographic. They need to be
Hmm.
cognizant as to whether or not they're in a one party state. Like Michigan is a one party state, right? But like Illinois is not. And what that means is that in Michigan, as long as I'm involved in a conversation, I can record it, and now I don't have to inform you. versus like Illinois is a two-party state, which means that if I record our conversation, I have to first alert you and have your permission. And so some of these folks, like, they might actually be in jeopardy of breaking the law, right? Because they're not only recording, but like they're posting it online.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other hand, um, I found them quite interesting, right? And it's been introspective for me to be cognizant, like when you are having those difficult conversations. Like I watched a young lady that she I saw it on IG, and
Yeah.
she'd recorded. They actually were letting her go. The company was doing a restructuring, and she asked them point blank, and I understand why, because she said, "You guys just recruited me like 3 months ago. Like, did
Oh
you
yeah.
not know that you didn't have the budget for these positions?" Because they were kind of dismantling like her team or her department. And I think that was a valid question. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, the HR person that was on the other end, and management, they kind of just glossed over her answer, and didn't give an answer, which is usually what, again, when people don't know what to say, they usually do in those awkward moments or situations. And
Mm-hmm.
it reflects badly on that company, right? And so branding is everything. And because social media is a large part of everything that we do, especially in business, companies also, on the other end of things, they need to be cognizant of that and cognizant of how they let people go. Now, I posted about like Tesla's latest, like layoffs and how the
Oh
debacle
geez.
there. Now, I will tell you, I did not see anyone post video footage, which was interesting. They actually let the people come to work, and then, like some like large facilities, especially if it's like a plant like facility, they have you park one place and then they bus you over to the actual plant. But they let those people bus over, and the way they found out that they didn't work there anymore is because their badge didn't work. And then security was like, okay, you have to go back on the shuttle and they'll take you back to your car. And that was handled so poorly. I'm shocked that I didn't see any like video footage of that. But
Yeah.
again, just the news articles alone, like I did a TikTok about it, and there were so many comments of like, I would never work there. Tesla is, a bad company. How dare they? And those things can impact like the consumer decision. And so, I think companies do have to be cognizant of that. But to avoid it, I think, companies do have to look and try to be proactive to, and seek some legal counsel to understand if they can, and it may be kind of a state by state thing, have some specific language in there, um, just
Mm-hmm.
around, recordings and things like that.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's helpful.
Yeah.
I was seeing someone like saying too, with like the people doing like the TikToks and stuff, or just videos in general. Someone suggested like stitching it or something like that, or doing like a feedback type thing, like, hey, like this person did work at this company, and kind of explaining their side. I don't know how to go about that, or like how that is seen to other people, but I thought that was pretty interesting. And honestly, I like when people do that, kind of like explaining their case, because like sometimes you'll see one side, and then when you hear the other person's side, it's just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So I was just curious too, like how you thought about responding directly to it. 'Cause I know some people be like, oh, don't
Mm-hmm.
say anything, just ignore it, but like what you said, like people,
Yeah, like a
yeah.
corporation, they're not. They're likely not going to, because they're likely going to be dissuaded from doing that from their like PR team, right, and legal counsel,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't really comment on an individual's personal like or disciplinary or like termination status. So it just
True.
makes it weird. Like in article form, like with news, like usually you'll notice that usually is the comment. Unfortunately, um, we don't comment on employees, you know,
This.
employment status,
Mm-hmm.
because again, it's about protecting the company, from litigation or what have you. And so, the best way that they can do that and safest is really to, and often you will see this, make a concerted effort to get in the public with publicity and commentary that maybe refutes that negative connotation that's been put out there about them. Now, some folks go overboard, and I've worked for a company or two that have done this, where because they've gotten bad press about, their lack of diversity. Next
Hmm.
thing you know, call Clanetta, we want you in some photos. Because it's not that diverse. So they'd only have a few of us to choose from. So next thing you know, you're in all the publications and
Right.
all over like the internet, like in their, on the website and stuff like that. Which is the wrong way to handle it, because the right way to address something like that is to actually create more diversity in your organization and
Right.
not just go, get the, you know, few diverse, folks and just try to like get a whole bunch of like content with them and plaster it all online. But but yeah, I think they're at risk with doing the whole Stitch thing.
Okay. So that's why exactly why I like to ask the actual professionals too for their opinion on certain things. Like you can listen to somebody else, but like if they're not in that space, the the advice needs to kind of be taken with a grain of salt. So I love that you brought that up, and that actually leads me to my next thing, like when you spoke about diversity. So now I would love to talk it from like a team to team, like team member to team member aspect, because like we know we see this a lot, like among corporations and stuff, and that's why some people leave, like dealing with like their peers, kind of either like microaggressions or just terrible folks to work with, partnerships and stuff. I'm honestly curious. So I never had to deal with that with my contractors, thankfully, but I've known companies I went into, like with consultation and stuff, help with the policy development and realizing like their culture sucks, just to be point blank. But sometimes you don't have an HR to kind of like man things together. I'm just like, I'm not HR, so I don't know how to help you here. But how, I don't know if you've been in a situation before, but like how have you had to help other businesses when their team is not working well together? We'll say that.
Oh, like usually some sort of like in the past, like a diversity training. Now, my focus is cultural competence, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's around like the leadership development and infusing the cultural competence conversation there. But I think I saw like a TikTok around something like that, that subject. And and I kind of laugh because I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm the best person to ask how to handle, that. Where the person was kind of picking at them, but sometimes I don't know a way, like if
Yeah.
it's happening to you individually, you may actually, kind of in a professional but coy way. Like I've started when people just say crazy things to me or ask me questions that I feel like are out of line. Like sometimes I will ask them, "No, what made you ask me that?" And then unfortunately, like usually they're caught off guard, right? And they kind of like back off because they're not
Yeah.
expecting that response. But yeah, I think, it definitely happens where people overstep their bounds. And unfortunately, because like usually it catches you off guard and, and people just aren't, they don't know what to say. And you're in a professional setting and you don't want to be caught like having issues with like a coworker per se, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
thinking in a corporate setting, right? Because the saying like if you're arguing like again people, the person across the street can't tell who's who, so they don't know who's right or wrong. They just see
Right.
like you're engaged in conflict, and that's not a good space to be in, like especially in that whole corporate space. um, but no, I would say, kind of try to be, depending on your personality, be direct, but try to, there's ways that you can, try to be coy with it,
Hmm.
um, or perky and upbeat, and, and just kind of put them on back on the spot.
I love it. I like that advice. I just wanted to take
Yeah.
a quick note. Feel free, guys, come on up and give advice if you have anything to say around this aspect. I would
Yeah,
love to hear
let's
y'all
have
stories
some
and how y'all navigate.
conversation. Yeah, what would you guys do? Because I know some of you probably have experienced that. Like like again, like it can be as petty as I've heard stories of people that they go on a vacation and
Hmm.
they come back and a colleague is like questioning like their ability to even go on the vacation, or maybe a
Yeah.
snide comment. So you're always going somewhere. You're always. And it's just like, come on.
And it's like, come on, what you in my business for? I think one of my favorite ones is like whenever I used to change up my hair. I changed up my hair a good bit, especially back in
Oh,
the day. I used to change up my hair a lot. Now I
yeah,
try to stick to like my usual braids, and I don't feel like doing much. But like one of my favorite ones is changing up my hair, and people just like coming around, and I feel like a art exhibit. Like, what did you do, or did you do something? Or is this your natural hair? Things like that. Or especially when it starts getting run
yeah,
down and raggedy, like, oh, I love what you did with it or something. She's
yeah.
like, girl, this looks like trash, but just like little stuff like that. Like it's not really a huge deal to me, but it's just funny.
No, but it is a huge deal because that is wearing. And that's the thing people don't realize, right? And they think that certain groups, African Americans, I'm going to speak for myself, like you're complaining, but imagine. Like, first of all, especially like if you're in that corporate space and you're climbing up the ladder, you're dealing with business stress and work stress, right? And
Hmm.
then to have to deal with the microaggression side of it, that's additional unnecessary pressure, that gets old, you know. And the hair thing, like, yeah, I would have people kind of ask or what have you, and then they want to act like they just like are clueless and want you to detail everything. I'm not doing that. Like, I would tell them, like, look, you need to look it up on YouTube. Kim Kardashian and Kylie Jenner. The extensions they have is the same thing, honey. You can Google it. Like, at this point, like, we're in 2024. But like you
Hmm.
said, it kind of and some people do it on purpose too. Like you said, it kind of makes you feel like an art exhibit, or puts you on display, and usually makes the individual feel very uncomfortable. And and so unfortunately a lot of folks are suffering in silence, because again, there's that fine line. You don't want to have the conflict, but yeah, again, sometimes you have to
Hmm.
kind of be direct back, and you can do it again, in that kind of PC kind of way.
Yeah.
You can kind of get your messaging across. Like, I love those memes, or like, they have the list of, this is what you're thinking, and then here's the business way to say it. Like,
I love
from
those.
some
I
of
be
the
saving some
clitoris.
of them so I can use for myself because I have a for me. So like I've actually offended some folks in the workforce, not on purpose. Like I was actually telling somebody this on during like an interview I did last week. Like sometimes I come across like very what's the brash? Is that the word I'm looking for? Like or like mean, but I don't mean to be. Like I just feel like I don't know. I guess I'm too straightforward sometimes. So and it comes off rude. So I've actually upset somebody in that aspect because it was just too direct with it, and instead of just having a conversation they were just like trying to fire back at me, so it was just kind of like what do you do in those what do you do in those situations? Because I'm better because I used to argue back, but I know that is not the right way to do it, so you guys do not argue back with folks, but I'm pretty sure there's like a proper way proper way to handle that.
So, okay, so explain the situation again.
Okay, so the situation is pretty much like okay, so let's say that you're both in like leadership um positions, and like the other person in leadership doesn't like how direct you are being with how they handle something, and instead of just kind of either taking it to the side or having a conversation about it, they decided to kind of they don't say directly, but they indirectly kind of like start nitpicking at you. Like how do you handle situations in that aspect, especially if
Oh,
HR has to get involved? because I was saying back in the day I used to argue back, but I know that's not the right
No,
way, and I don't know how
no,
to tell people not to do that. 'Cause this is my
no, no. You don't want to do that, and definitely not in public. But you do want to again, like my vantage point is always that corporate space, like in the larger organizations, because it's there can be so many games that get played. And
yeah.
so in that instance, I would tell you to first not involve HR. I would go and try to have a conversation with the individual, and
Okay.
see if you guys can come to some common ground calmly. But I tell people to get in practice of just sending a memo to self. Just send a note to self. Hey, I had an issue with, I'm just going to say Matt today. And, this happened, so I went and met with him, briefly. We both expressed what went on, if he apologizes, whatever, but document what occurred and just send it to yourself, right? Because, see, later down the road, what could happen is they could go to HR or depending on their level, in some of the private, like succession planning meetings and discussions. Um, I've been in those meetings, and sometimes, when we get on a person's, name, someone
Hmm.
may say, um, yeah, like they don't know, they've been having some issues, they've been, they just, they have a lot of conflict, they just don't, they don't seem to get along well with the team, and they may say something vague like that. Now, unfortunately, I can't trust that other HR professionals are going to probe as I do. When I hear like those vague comments being made about somebody,
Hmm.
um, I probe. You know, tell me more. What do you mean? Because I'm looking for a clear, specific example and not just a generality. And I don't want someone to have negative impact because someone also is kind of speaking from hearsay.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I heard they're difficult to work with. And again, it may be the situation that you're speaking of where there's one individual for whom there's been some conflict, but someone else has observed, or that individual they're having conflict with has gone around and said, oh, she's just difficult, she's just argumentative. Because you might drill down and you find out, no, like maybe, the individual that there was a conflict with was like performing a process wrong or putting the company at risk. And they, this person that's coined as being difficult actually addressed it and tried to bring correction, to maybe improper behavior or improper processes. And that person just, didn't like it. And the person actually isn't difficult. They actually were doing their job and doing a very good
Hmm.
job.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I want to hear some comments or reactions from, the crowd. What are some opinions that are out there with you guys? Have you guys dealt with, folks dealing with microaggressions or conflict in the workplace, or had to coach people through that?
I would love to hear from that too. In the meantime, I'll share another little story that I've had happen. I had too many lives and stuff happening.
You getting
So,
stuff off your chest.
man, listen, I was like, yeah, cause I was like, there's so many little positions I've been put in. So, but this one has been resolved and everything. This was like years ago. So, I've actually had an instance where I had a manager use a racial slur with well, she didn't say it to my face, but like other employees heard it as well, and they were telling me like letting me know what happened and stuff. So like I had to come up with like a documented case against that.
Hmm.
And for me, it wasn't really hard. I was like, I'm okay with having to what's the word? Like I'm okay with confrontation to an extent, and with something like that, I was fine with that. And I know a lot of people are not confrontational. So it's just like, for people that may be in this instance, and luckily the other managers and stuff are on my side, so like she got fired pretty quick, like once we built the case and showed proof.
Mm-hmm.
But like where they may not have a safe environment, it's just like, how do you go about something like that? Because I couldn't imagine not those people not having my back and getting her fired. What would happen?
No, I think you handled it correctly, right? You definitely want to
Hmm.
report it, like something like that, and you want to report it immediately and in a timely manner so that you can. Now, that's where you do go to HR, and you document even that. This happened and I reported it to HR on this date, and, you know, kind of let them work through it because most companies are going to have policies that discourage that type of behavior.
Hmm.
So it's a policy violation.
Okay, so good. So going against that. So wonder if it. I'm just being hypothetical here. So like, wonder if it's like a place where HR is not really team member friendly, because I've heard of like instances where it's like HR is like they're strictly there for the company, will not do anything else, like try to learn the individual, hear their side or anything. It's just like, okay, well, this was the policy, or ignoring their feedback. So it's just kind of like, I don't know if you have any like advice in that arena, what
Yeah,
they would go, how they would go about it. Like, would they still like report it through HR? Is there
mm-hmm.
like another place they should go to, or is it kind of just like they
Yeah.
just should just look for another job?
No, like, yeah, they need to report it. And like I said, document that you reported it to HR. You give them a few days to a week, like to address it or, get back with you. If you see, like, because you kind of know, if you know the culture's like that already where they're not addressing
Mm-hmm.
things, then your next step is, going seeking outside counsel, like going to the EEOC.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: you have to have reported it to the, like, the boss or an HR,
Mm, okay.
and given them a reasonable amount of time. Like they're going to encourage you. You don't have to, but they're going to encourage that you've given them a reasonable amount of time to address said issue, and and you can go talk to them about it because when they do like their discovery, of course, like the EEOC would contact the company and they'll want kind of a breakdown of like the timeline of events, and they're going to want to see that you did raise the issue to the company and they just ignored it or didn't take any action on it, and then they kind of take it from there.
Ah, okay.
And some folks are afraid of retaliation, which is real.
Yeah.
And that's again, that's a violation in and of itself. And so, yeah, they do have other outside measures that they can take to address some of those issues, i.e., involving the EEOC or what have you.
Okay, that makes okay. I was just curious about that because I've never been in that situation, but I've spoken to people that have. So I was just like, I wasn't sure when that process, how that looks like and everything. I was like, I just know the documentation, like, make sure you have that piece, but I don't know
Mm-hmm.
the steps.
Yeah, I've had people like report it, right? So I've been again in the HR realm, especially in the plants, and
Hmm.
like they actually reported it to their union, and then it was reported to HR. So we conducted an investigation. I brought the person up who then was nervous because like he actually said the N word, and myself and the committee man were both African American. We were both black, and so of course he was nervous, and then he's proceeded to tell us that a demon jumped in his body, and that's why he said the word.
Wow.
And I just conducted it as I would any other disciplinary hearing, and kindly let him know that he was going to be off for. I think he'd had a previous issue, so I think I was put him off for about 2 weeks unpaid. Um, as a
Yeah.
disciplinary action or what have you. And, we work with the union to kind of get him, like again, some additional like zero tolerance training or what have you upon his return. But no, the key thing I think is to report it and report it in a timely manner because you also don't want, you don't want other folks to act or retaliate either,
Hmm.
right? And especially, I go back to like that plant situation, like it could have gone down.
Yeah.
It really could have gone down. And that was part of it. Like we had to pull, so again, like as an HR professional in a unionized environment, you want to have good relationships with your union, right? And so, like,
Hmm.
collectively, we actually, after we addressed it and got him out the door, we went on the floor to the area that the folks worked in and actually, pulled them together in a huddle just to let them know, kind of what was going on. And we take those things serious and we have zero tolerance against that type of behavior, to put everyone else on notice that, look, we're not going to, to have that type of behavior here.
Yeah. Okay. Man, a lot.
What?
I said, man, that's a lot.
I mean, it happens. I mean, you're dealing with people, right? That's why, again, it's funny. Like with HR, I laugh because I was talking to someone the other day, and a lot of folks, especially when they're young and green, people ask them, "Why did you go in HR?" And they're like, "Because I like people," and it's like, well, let's talk in a few years because I
Yeah.
mean,
There's a lot that goes
but
into it.
yeah, and it's not black and white. Um, a lot of times it's not prescriptive. We often operate in the gray, and that's where some folks get frustrated in our field because they want things to be just black or white, right?
Hmm.
Or right or wrong, and sometimes it's very complex. Like there's so many complexities when you're involving people in the mix, and so it can be confusing, and then you have to use sometimes your own guidance and discretion. And the reality is, you really can impact people's life. You can impact their livelihood because oftentimes you have to make the decision, you know, whether or not, again, like if you're putting them out for disciplinary action unpaid or either terminating
Yeah.
them, like you really can impact someone's life and their livelihood.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. And that's exactly why I was like, I stay in my little operational side.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, yeah, man, y'all got to do a lot.
No,
So I will
absolutely,
say,
absolutely. Now,
if
something I want to get your opinion on, especially
mm,
in your documentation area. So, a few weeks ago, like I reported on the whole FTC ruling to ban the use of non compete agreements.
mm,
Um, what are your thoughts around that?
honestly, I've never really been big on non compete because again, I work with 1099 contractors, so it's just kind of like depending on what I hired them for, like we kind of do similar stuff anyway. I do have like something written in the contract where they can't like poach my clients and stuff, but non compete, I usually refer them to people I don't even work with. So it's just for me, with it being gone, it's just kind of like it never really affected me. And then usually with like other people I work with, when it comes to like designing their process and policy surrounding that stuff, it's just kind of like I don't know. It's just, I guess, just a personal preference. I don't
Well,
see
what
like the
about the
huge.
clients that you work with, like some of the businesses? Do you think it will have a major impact on them?
I think for some of them, I will say, because I work with like kind of like a mixture of like same consultancies and then healthcare and all that stuff. I will say maybe for some of them, like they don't want them going to like competitors or something like that. But even then, it's just kind of like I try to have them focus more so on like what are you trying to protect or what if pretty much like what would happen if they did go to this competitor, like what how what things do we need to pinpoint and what things do we need to kind of like focus on, because like I deal a lot with like licensing and stuff and making sure that documentation is like protected intellectual property. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like we kind of look at it more so like, okay, like if this person were to work here and they using like the intellectual property for this thing, what exactly would they be giving to like the next person? So it's just kind of, it doesn't really too much affect them just because we kind of look at that aspect and make sure we focus on, they get their lawyers and stuff for that other stuff, but make sure like that stuff is created where it's just like, okay, they have access to this portion, so like even if they did go somewhere else they don't have but so much to give, and it's kind of like general stuff, so it's just kind of like making sure things are exact so they can't give things away.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the key. Like I know there was a lot of angst and people upset about the ruling, and and again, and I'm like on both sides. I am happy for the people for whom it's a win that feel like they've been negatively impacted by being placed on non-compete agreements. Um, but I think that like I've kind of had conversations calming folks down, like clients,
Mm-hmm.
that again, I think in a lot of instances, non compete agreements were not the best solution anyway.
Right.
They were inappropriately using them. And the reality is, they should have been using other tools. So, like you mentioned, where they have licensing and intellectual property, and having language around the use of that and the sharing of that. And
Right.
in some instances, um, non disclosure agreements were actually the more appropriate document to have in place. And so, for many folks, they're going to be, again, they need to just stop and take a look at what is it that I'm trying to accomplish, or what is it that I'm trying to prevent, and then kind of work backwards, right? And oftentimes, like I said, in many of those cases, I would say like the non disclosure agreements are going to be the better solution anyway. And so, I've had conversations, with folks that like, so we have a fix, we have a solution. Um, and so, because
Mm-hmm.
somebody, she was on a 10, she was like, I can't believe the government is just, and so, and I know like they're in like with app creation and stuff like that, and so I was just saying like, look, I think actually the non-disclosure agreement is
Right.
probably even the better solution anyway, with what you're doing, and so it helped calm them down. So I think there's other solutions, and so folks will have to just be creative and look at their other options and make sure that they're using the appropriate forms of documentation,
Mm-hmm.
in place of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, where people were arguing that, hey, it was actually preventing them from being able to like earn a living, again, it's a win for them, and I'm happy
Yeah.
for them.
That's exactly how I feel. And then that's another reason why too is like I drive so hard with like intellectual property and actually getting licensed and get your trademarks and all that stuff. Cause just like when that's protected, it's like you don't really fear the non compete. So that's why I was like when it was overturned, it's just kind of like I didn't see the huge deal. Like, I see for some folks, I see why it was a huge deal because, like you said, it was stopping some people's income. But I was like, honestly, a lot of these businesses aren't handling their documentation stuff the right way, so that's why they had those in place in the first place. And honestly, kind of using them illegally. So yeah, it's just like so. The biggest thing I was just like, as long as you document and actually protect your
Hmm.
work, the non compete honestly isn't a huge. It shouldn't be something that should be like a huge deal or missed.
Yeah, yeah, I've thought about that, and I wanted your opinion because you operate in the documentation space. So I
Mm-hmm.
was curious to kind of understand where your thoughts were with that, and what have you. But yeah,
Yeah, I was against it. I was like, it don't matter to me. It's like get your stuff protected, y'all.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so we got about 11 minutes left. If you guys have any stories, feedback, tips you want to share, feel free to come on up and let us know. We're kind of just, as y'all can tell, having a pretty loose conversation about having tough conversations in the workforce. So yeah, so I'll leave it at that. Feel free to raise your hand, come on up. I gotta get used. This isn't Clubhouse. I still operate from that. sometimes, even though I haven't been on Clubhouse in like almost 2 years. But yeah. Hey, Christina.
Hey, Christina. Thank you for getting up so early.
Oh,
I
you're
know.
you're welcome, Miss Clonetta. Good morning. I loved you guys' discussion. What I'm going to add is that I want to touch on something Clonetta said earlier about conflict and how you resolve conflict.
Mm-hmm.
People, for some reason, think that they don't have to be accountable for their own communications with their coworkers. HR is not your communicator. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a concern or an issue with a coworker, or even a supervisor, the best strategy always is for you to have a direct conversation with that person first and then follow up with HR and kind of let HR know what has happened. What that does is it actually puts us in a position where we can take action because you have already let someone know, I don't like this. You've made me uncomfortable. I think it's disrespectful when you say that. So if you come to me and say, so and so said X, Y, and Z, that's one thing. But if you come to me and you said X, Y, and Z, I spoke with them and said let them know that I had an issue with it, and so has again said X, Y, and Z. Now we're at a place where I can take action because you have first advocated for yourself. So I always advise people HR should not be your first stop when you have conflict with your coworkers. You should be able to, in HR, one of the responsibilities, if they're doing that continuous development, is to be giving people the tools to actually have those. I don't like that. That makes me uncomfortable. Really, it's the stuff you do with your children. I have kids that are in elementary school, and I tell them, they come home and they say stuff to me about their teachers, and I say, well, did you tell your teacher how that made you feel? So it's really kind of like elementary school stuff that we're trying to get workers to understand that you are in control of your own interactions and communications with your coworkers. We are not the police. We are
Mm-hmm.
there to make sure that the rights that you've been given under certain mandates aren't violated. But we are not there to have these communications for you. Now, if you're uncomfortable, I can assist you, which means that I can be sitting there while you have a conversation with someone, but ultimately you're responsible for that conversation. So I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's a part that people miss, and that's how small issues that could be kind of resolved quickly, they filter out, and then people are frustrated, and now all of a sudden you're in a place where I'm being harassed, but this is the first that you've ever even said anything. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point that Clonettis made, which is your first course of action is to first advocate for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was really good. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the problem too. Like they see HR as this kind of like savior, so to speak. Like, oh, like if I have anything going on, I need to go to HR and have them deal with it. So I love that.
Yeah. And again, HR is not above reproach. Like HR has checks and balances too. Everybody reports to to somebody.
Right.
And so, people just want you to, you know, jump out the water or jump off the bridge or whatever. Um, and that's where, like things can kind of go awry, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to have your own checks and balances. And even, with management, like sometimes, like I've had to, like sometimes I've had to fight, look. And, you know, like I have, where I could see things actually were not being done in the right spirit, where, supervisors were frustrated with someone, they let things go on, they hadn't been addressing it, and then they come to HR and they're like, I want them gone, I want to fire them, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, again, like I keep it real, like everyone in our field is not perfect or skilled. Unfortunately, I think HR, because, there's different levels to it. Some folks are thrown in HR, at a more administrative, pace, and sometimes they kind of get moved up and they're not really equipped to operate in our space. I tell people HR really is employment law, right? And so, and less of the tactical and administrative. Like that's just the entry scope of it. And so, there have been some of those bad HR folks that, they just do whatever management says, or they do whatever the CEO says. And
Mm-hmm.
they have created issues and harm to organizations. And so hopefully you do have a strong HR person or you are a strong HR person where you're able to tactfully push back or challenge, and make sure that things are documented or that the right steps have been taken and you're not just harming people and harming the organization.
You know what I'm going to add to that, Cornetta, too, is I think for a lot of HR professionals, one of the issues that kind of ties their hand, this is why people are like, well, HR is only for the company, is how HR is structured. If
Mm-hmm.
your HR is structured where they're reporting to someone in operations, that is a major problem
Yeah.
because they have a hard time pushing back with supervisors or managers when they make decisions or they or violate the law. I've literally seen supervisors and managers violate laws, and because of the way that the company has structured HR and where they put them in the organizational chart, it kind of puts them in a position where you don't want to be going back and forth with your superior. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I do when I go in and I'm consulting is first thing I'm looking at is your organizational chart because I want to see who's reporting to who and if that makes sense. It does not make sense for you to have an HR representative. I don't care if they're an admin, a manager, or whatever. No one in HR should be working reporting to anyone that's operational, because at the end of the day, I've been in situations as an HR director where I've had to correct the owner. Like, no,
Yeah.
sir, I understand that's what you want to do, sir, but absolutely not because X, Y, and Z. So, as an HR professional, one, you want to be strong in knowing what the regulations and the mandates are. And then you want to be able to practically apply those to real life work situations. I think that's where a lot of our HR professionals get in trouble is because they understand and they can read what the mandate is, but how do you apply that to what's actually happening? That takes experience, that takes skill, and every HR professional, as Clonetta said, is not the same. There are some that are horrible. And the ones that come across as horrible are actually the ones that are unskilled in some of the things that they're supposed to be providing for the organization. And that becomes a problem.
Jeez, Christina.
I was sitting there like clapping. I was like,
I'm
yes. I
just,
was like, y'all, no, don't
I'm just
Look,
do
kidding.
I'm
operations.
true to this. I'm not new to it. I've been doing this for so long that I can literally see, if you look at an organizational chart, you can really pinpoint what's happening. Because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times physicians are reporting to people that they shouldn't be reporting to. HR is
Yeah.
unfortunately one of those positions that really gets misplaced in organizational charts.
Yeah.
Nah,
Definitely.
yeah. So we started talking at the same time. I was saying like that was one of the bigger things I've noticed too. If they even had an HR with some of the companies I went inside of, like trying to do like figure out like the day to day structures, like they'll have HR and operations kind of like as the same. Just like nah, we ain't doing that. It's about to lead to some
Mm-hmm.
problems.
No, there was one position that I was actually offered interview, good salary. This is when I was working before I just started consulting. Good salary, everything. But when I started talking to them about the reporting structure, they literally had HR reporting to the operations manager, and that was the first thing that I started to negotiate with them. Like, hey, I want to join your organization. I love what you guys are doing, but it's absolutely inappropriate for you guys to have HR reporting to your operations manager. If we can't change that, I can't accept your offer. And they actually did change it and luckily they did because I ended up having a whole bunch of issues with how operations was running. And so, but if I had accepted the position under those guidelines, my hands would have been tied because that person would have been my superior. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
No, I'm glad you raised that up because I see that happen a lot. And I will say, well, I'm part like L&D and operations because two different things. I was like, honestly, more so operations should follow along with like HR, at least like work together. So it's like it doesn't make sense to have them underneath them. So I love that that was brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always tell when I do consulting and I'm talking with HR professionals and I'm doing one on ones with them, that's the first thing I always talk to them about is where are you positioned in the organizational chart? Do you have a seat at the table? Because if your HR professional does not have a seat at the decision making table, you can almost bet your bottom dollar that that company is out of compliance in a lot of areas.
Mm-hmm. And Christina's gonna find it if they're out of compliance. She is the compliance queen.
Yeah, I am. I specialize in compliance, but
Uh-huh.
it's because I exactly how you were saying, like HR is kind of like employment law. So in
Mm-hmm.
another life, if I had not had started having children so early and moved into life and having fun, I probably would have went into employment law. So for me, HR was a good alternative because I didn't have the time, and to be honest, the patience to go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a clear understanding of the intricacies of compliance and how they apply to different um, to different real life workplace scenarios because I have an interest in that area.
Right.
So people are really good at what they're passionate about and what they like. And that just
Mm-hmm.
happens to be one of the things that I like. And so I do say that my company, my agency, we specialize in compliance because if I come in and I start seeing crazy stuff, I'm going to be able to quickly tell you, hey, this is not right, and this
Yeah.
is why.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we're definitely at time. I will say, do a last call. If you guys have any remarks, question, comments, let us know or just shoot us a message and we'll answer them. I appreciate you, Christina, coming up here and giving us that necessary information because,
Anytime.
yeah, I was like, that's honestly, man, we might have to do another audio room just on compliance because that is a
I think
really
we
big
should.
issue.
Yeah. With the compliance queen as our special guest. I'm gonna find a sassy name for you. I'm the HR whisperer. We're gonna find the compliance queen.
I
Okay,
like
well you let me know because I'm gonna start using them. Like Lynetta has given me this tagline because HR Whisper. I love that. It's so great because that's what we do. We literally
Mhm.
whisper in the ears of the decision makers and guide
Mhm.
them. So I love your tag. So yeah, think of one for
And
me too.
absolutely, yeah. And people love the clients love it. They'll call literally. I need some of your whispers. So yeah, definitely. But this I think was a great conversation and great discussion. So yeah, good
and honestly
evening.
could
We
have kept
gotta.
going on.
I'm telling you, we gotta get back to life. So.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you guys for joining us today. We will be back in a couple of weeks. I'll figure out a topic at some point and we will start sharing that. But tune in was well, let me check the date real quick, the next thing before I tell y'all the wrong thing. Okay, so May 24th, you can expect us here on LinkedIn Audio from Tales from the Water Cooler. Feel free to chime in anytime, hop in. We, as you can tell, keep this very conversational. I don't like just teaching and preaching and all that stuff. I like hearing actual real stories and finding real solutions and all that good stuff. So I will end there. And yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with us on Friday.
Yeah. All right. Bye, guys. Have a great weekend.
Bye.